Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. My name is Mickey Joe, and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I am a professional theatre critic, I am a pundit, and I am a content creator, and I am so excited that Mamma Mia! I Have a Dream is now airing on Sundays in the UK for the next few weeks. This is a TV casting competition that aims to find the next performers who will play Sophie and Sky in the West End production of Mamma Mia, which is about to celebrate its 25th anniversary at the Novello Theatre. Now, I've loved these musical theatre TV casting shows for so long. They're a big part of what first got me really excited about musical theatre when I was growing up, but it's been a long time since we've had one. You know, we had those Andrew Lloyd Webber shows back in the day in the UK, casting performers for revivals of The Sound of Music and Oliver and Joseph and The Wizard of Oz and Jesus Christ Superstar. And there have been other similar series. There have been some in the US, but it's been a long time since we've had one. And now finally, Mamma Mia! I Have a Dream is bringing it back to us via Greece. Because unlike those previous shows, this one is not filmed in a TV studio. No, this one is being filmed on location, or should I say, has been filmed on location. Because the other big difference is this one is not going to have live weekly broadcasts where the audience get to vote for who will be eliminated. Instead, everything up to the final has already been filmed. It's already happened, and a bunch of performers have already been eliminated. Save for a final few who will participate in a live final coming later this year. But so far we have only seen episode 1, and today I'm going to be discussing everything that happened. So we are going to be doing a recap of what went down in episode 1. We are going to be reviewing it just a little bit. Do we like this format? Like I mentioned, it's very different to TV casting shows we have seen before. And then we're going to be giving you a little bit of post-match analysis as well. As the weeks progress, we're going to be looking at these performers and we're going to be putting them into a sort of a power ranking. Who are we really seeing emerging from the pack and who are we seeing falling behind? More to the point, who do we think could be Sky and Sophie in the West End? Now, I keep saying we, and there is an empty chair here next to me because the best way to enjoy any TV show is with someone else. So I thought for these, it would be fantastic to have some different guests. And today I am joined by my stagey fiancé, Aaron James.
Why, hello there.
Hello, Aaron James.
Hello.
Oh my god, hey, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am good. I am well. I should also say we are not alone. I bought this bear yesterday at MusicalCon because I thought this is perfect. This is the perfect addition to the Mamma Mia! I Have a Dream recap video series set, and his name is Aber, but he is also the third B in ABBA. The third B is Bear. Benny, Bjorn and Bear.
The iconicness of your stagey theatrical plushie collection knows no bounds.
There's so many. Honestly, it's a problem at this point. But we watched the episode last night.
We did.
A little bit after it aired because we were coming back from MusicalCon. It was nice, actually. We've got a Chinese.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best way to experience one of these shows, is to kind of be relaxed with people that have the same stagey qualities as you and just relax and watch. It's such a fun series. I really missed that kind of sitting down and watching the fun of theatrical casting and seeing these new emerging performers find an audience. And it's really exciting, actually, that we're not only going to be talking about like these two people that will become Sophie and Sky, but also this whole group of performers that are being introduced to the theatre community and further. And it's going to be so excited to think, where else could we see these performers? Exactly. What other shows could they be going into? I mean, you have Samantha Barks sat there on the judging panel who got third place. She did end up playing Nancy, just not as the winner. Yeah. And then has now been Elsa, has been Eponine, is the film version of Les Mis is Eponine. Yeah. And to think about every single... I mean, we've talked through all these past series and gone through kind of where are they now, and it's phenomenal to see kind of where they've all been. I mean, the Jesus Christ Superstar series, David Hunter is currently the lead in The Time Traveller's Wife. He did not win. Yeah, she represents everything that they can go on to achieve, even if you don't win that series. And that gives me the great opportunity to plug some other videos I'll be doing here on my channel, because we are going to be looking back at those previous shows and playing Where Are They Now? You know, some are more obvious than others, but there are a lot of performers from those shows who were maybe earlier exits in the process
who have been performing in the West End. There was a moment not long ago in the West End where almost all of the Nancys were in a show almost at the same time, like a lot of them from the I'd Do Anything series. But today we are talking Mamma Mia. So, first things first, we are going to talk through and recap what happened in the first episode. Now, we've seen this twice because we got invited to see a little preview screening of it back in September.
We've had to keep quiet this whole time about what we knew.
We have. We've known the secrets, but beyond that, we now know nothing else.
No, nothing from this point onwards do we know in advance.
No, we know as much as the rest of you. We don't know who makes the final, so all of the punditry you're going to hear is just our organic speculation completely. So we started with this opening number that immediately introduced us to our 14 contestants. 7 performers hoping to win the role of Sophie, 7 hoping to win the role of Sky. And we had 2 different filmed musical numbers that they performed as a group with some other ensemble members as well. They performed Mamma Mia and they performed I Have a Dream, just to really labour the point and remind you of the title of the programme. Was there anyone in those 2 opening sequences who really immediately stood out to you? Bear in mind, this is their complete first impression.
I feel like we've both agreed that Stephanie probably made the strongest impact, I think, out of everyone.
The way she was staged helped that as well, because some of them were sort of paired up, and she had this solo moment with a bit of choreography that literally put her over the top. And it was a very strong appearance from her. And
she went with a different option than the melody. It was very kind of, here, it's me. You're going to remember that I did something a little bit different than what you were expecting. And I think in general it helped that their names appeared for each of their moments with I Have a Dream, because it was very this person, this person, this person.
Yeah.
So instantly that's kind of your first impression and you will remember exactly who they are for that moment.
Yeah. And what you said about vocal choices, you have a split second to gain people's interest. You only have 1 or 2 lines in this group number. If you're making a vocal choice, that's a great way to stand out. I think it's a risk, but a risk that paid off for her, I think. And she also got to be, she was the first one in I Have a Dream. She was there in that boat, getting to sing the first line. So it felt immediately like maybe she's being pushed as a frontrunner. I don't know. Bear in mind, those old live shows, in the editing, they couldn't really push a frontrunner because they didn't know from one week to the next what was going to happen. Having now edited this, they know who the finalists are. So we can pick up on little details like that.
Yeah, it's a bit like shows like Drag Race, for example, where the edit can make it very clear who is going far, who's going there. And this show will follow more that kind of editing style rather than the previous reality show was for the casting process, where it was the fact that during those initial auditions leading up to the live shows, they could do it, but not further on.
Exactly, yeah. What about the guys then, of the potential Skies? Did anyone stand out? I think that Craig made a really good impression. Again, of the vocals. Everyone sounded great, everyone looked great, but I think he was the one that really grabbed me in both of those sequences again, and I thought, ooh, this is a particularly strong vocalist.
Yeah.
And that sort of made me sit up and pay attention.
I agree. I think in I Have a Dream, interestingly, Marcellus was one that stuck out to me, but I think it's because he had a quality in his voice that was like, oh, that's not what we've heard with a Sky before. And I think this is something that I'm aware of watching this series is, as well as going kind of, we know who has been Sophie and who has been Sky before, we know kind of what the mould so far has been for Sophie and Sky, but also I want Mamma Mia to expand who is Sophie and Sky. Completely. And what those songs, what ABBA sounds like. It doesn't always have to sound specifically how it's been since it opened.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to have more vibrato, more kind of colour, more
don't let Alan Carr hear you talking about vibrato.
Oh, yes.
So the next thing that happened is we got to meet our judges.
Yes.
We got introduced to the judging panel. So we had pop superstar and Mamma Mia superfan Jessie Ware, who, being a musical theatre person, I wasn't that familiar with Jessie Ware before.
I wasn't aware that she was such a musical theatre fan that she
I know.
cuts people out of her
I
life
loved
that
that
don't like
line.
musicals.
That was terrific, where she said, I don't trust anyone who doesn't like musical theatre. And
I can relate.
I can relate, absolutely. Yeah. We had, of course, Samantha Barks, we've already spoken about. We had Amber Riley.
Queen.
Of Glee, Olivier Award winner Amber Riley
Yes.
for her performance in Dreamgirls. And then we had Alan Carr as well, who immediately acknowledged sort of the elephant in the Greek island that was like, why is he on this panel? And I've seen people questioning that on social media as well.
But I really liked his reasoning, because there is this thing that people will be watching this series who are fans of musicals but are not in the industry, are not performers, but then when they see shows will have opinions, will know what they'd like to see if they went to see this show.
Alan is of the people,
Exactly.
for the people. And the audiences at Mamma Mia at the Novello Theatre are not made up of theatre critics and performers every week. They're made up of theatre-goers, people who are looking to be entertained. And like he said, I know quality when I see it. And I'm sure a lot of other people feel that way at home.
And to be taken over by the personalities and the heart of these people. And I think in any reality TV series, one of the big things is the audiences and the judges falling for these people and wanting them to succeed. And I think to have somebody there on the panel that's more their role, is to be, I really want this person to get a West End leading role, and that being a driver to get them through the series.
Yeah.
And I will highlight, I feel like that's why Zoe Ball is such a fab choice for the host. I think she has such a warmth and such a love of the show, but also just that she feels like when we saw any clip with her with the contestants, you could tell that it felt like this warm presence that was there, and it kind of felt nice and reassuring that you didn't feel like they were not in safe hands, and that she'd be there for them the whole time, regardless of what was going on in the series. And I think that was so nice to just tell straight away, is that this feels safe and you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the vibe of the show, but it does feel specifically very nurturing and supportive, a little more like a sort of a Great British Bake Off, where it's quite,
completely.
wholesome. One of the next things that happened is we saw them having their first workshops where they got to meet the judges for the first time. They had those reactions to those first meetings. And again, I liked the judges, were giving them a hug and were there to be supportive. It didn't feel maybe the way it's been framed before, of the judges having these like X Factor style videos of them with their arms crossed looking intense like Bond villains.
Yeah, in the past versions, it didn't really feel like the judges actually spent time with them. I think it felt like maybe they were there during the boot camp, but then after that, their roles weren't really to be mentors.
And they had other coaches that they brought in as well. So they had the opportunity to rehearse with a musical director and choreographer who had worked extensively with Mamma Mia before. They had these sort of masterclass workshop sessions where they were rehearsing numbers that they found out they were going to be performing for a live audience in this Greek outdoor setting. And that would be their first challenge, the first night of performances, and they would be judged by the judges, and after that there would be an elimination.
It was fun though during those workshops with the team to see how involved the judges were. They were kind of sat back in the panel watching, but then obviously Samantha Barks and Amber Riley couldn't help themselves, but
they jumped up, they got involved.
The moment they were like, I have advice, I am going down there and sorting this, and came one of the best lines of the series.
Oh, that moment when Alan Carr said Samantha looks like she's doing market research.
Hilarious.
And that blue suit with the clipboard. That's TV moment of the year, 2023.
And this is why this lineup really works, because I think half of the joy of this series is going to be those four and these funny one-liners, their reactions. You can tell they all really get on with each other, so I feel like that's just going to become fun. I'm fascinated to know whether in the series we're going to hear Amber or Samantha take on Mamma Mia, or even Jessie.
I feel like we have to. I feel like everyone has to get involved.
It was interesting as well that we got to see this moment, and I wonder if we're going to get it through every episode, where we'll see rehearsals, tech, performance, because that was not something that we used to get fully in the last time. You'd get kind of a
snippet.
Yeah, you get kind of that, like, the little bit of prep before, but mainly the focus was on performance critique, and because it was live, it was more of a studio setup.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to know whether it will always be all of them like this, or whether we're going to see smaller groups each week, because the whole kind of setup for this show is going to be, it feels like it's just going to be different because it's all pre-filmed, so they've got so much more scope to change it up.
Right before we got to see all the performances, we were introduced to Judy Kramer. So Judy Kramer, who is also involved in this series as, you know, the brains behind Mamma Mia, both the show and the film. And she is kind of fulfilling the role that Andrew Lloyd Webber fulfilled on some of those previous shows.
Yeah, she's kind of like a guardian angel, kind of the person that's brought in to kind of say thoughts more to Zoe Ball, not really to anybody that's there. She's more kind of a commentator on what is the essence of Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
And the kind of the
no one knows that brand better than she does. Except Andrew had the final say during eliminations, and from what we can tell, Judy Kramer is very hands-off in this process. You know, she's there, she's on set, she's enjoying her holiday in Greece, but she has said that the judges, they are going to have to make those decisions by themselves.
She says it, but then I still wonder whether there's going to be moments where she maybe doesn't make the decision, but very strongly hints how she feels.
She's going to wink from the side. Yeah. She had this line as well. She said it was a huge risk for her to cast in this way. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think it's definitely a bold casting approach. Yeah. But they've pre-assembled, through an audition process that we didn't see films, they've pre-assembled these 14 talents, all of whom are fantastic. That's the thing. They could, like, any combination of these two, it's going to be a great show.
I think as well, there's a difference with this series where they're casting for replacements in a show. They're not casting for the past series when it was a brand new production where a lot of it is going to be formed around this person.
Yeah.
Like the Oliver Revival, a lot of it did hang on Jodie Prenger as Nancy and how it was going to be built.
Yeah.
And with Sound of Music, with Maria, Connie Fisher was going to be vital to how that production was created.
Yeah.
Whereas with this production, they're going to be joining this 25-year-old show that has been like, it's everybody from production to wardrobe to everything. They for them, it's a continuation of their ongoing jobs. There's kind of this warm hug that they're going to enter where everybody kind of, it's all there. There's no, they're not joining a team that's all brand new.
It's interesting. I agree with you completely that they don't have the stress of launching something new, but at the same time, is there that element of they're about to jump onto a treadmill that's already running?
Yeah, there's going to be a quick pace.
The two. I mean, luckily it's two of them, so they're going to have that, like the Sophie and the Sky. They're going to have each other during that process, but they're joining a cast that are already established. They're joining a show that's already established.
And they're joining it part way through the year.
Exactly. It's not a full cast change.
No, they're joining the cast about 3 months, or I think around 3 months into their run.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting that they're kind of, in a sense, going to be latecomers to their cast that they're with.
So we then saw the performances, these actual performances. So what they were doing was they were performing ABBA songs from the show and the film.
Yeah.
And they have said it's not always going to be ABBA for every week of this competition. They're going to be performing other things as well.
But you had to start off with ABBA.
You had to start off with ABBA. I dare say there will be some more ABBA. Yeah. Whether we'll see some ABBA from outside of the Mamma Mia canon. There was so it wasn't just the first film either, because we had
Fernando.
We had Fernando, which obviously appears in the second film. But I dare say we'll hear some songs from the wider oeuvre, like you do when you go see Mamma Mia the Party. Yeah. They feature a lot of ABBA songs that aren't in either of the films or the stage show.
Yeah, but beloved. I think it's nice as well that they're going to do this range. It won't just be ABBA through, because I think you naturally are going to go, oh, I'd love to see them in this show, actually.
Completely.
Maybe they're not a Sophie, but this performance of this show, and hopefully they might get a week that it might go into musical theatre and we'll see them do a range of shows, hopefully.
Hopefully, I can only hope so, yeah.
I do wonder as well if we'll get a chance to see them in particular the Sophies tackle the relationship between them and Donna, because it's such a vital part. It would
them
be
and
nice.
Donna, them and the dads.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that to be explored, but all in the coming weeks.
Yes.
For these first performances, what I thought was really interesting was they didn't seem to touch at all on anything Sophie or Sky. Not only were they not songs specifically that those characters would sing, but there wasn't really anything in their performances. They weren't directed to sort of interpret it through a Sophie or Sky perspective. I wonder if any of them were really thinking 3 steps ahead and thinking like, let me try and give Sophie through the filter of this sort of like money, money, money routine. I think what the plan probably was there was to just see them, you know, without too much to think about, without like going into like characterization. They're just being themselves. They're just being performers, which they all are to a certain extent. And they were just sort of bringing their own talent and their own star quality. So you can see them as individuals, and you can already see what do they have at their fingertips. Who is already sort of bringing those characteristics, and rather than getting them to act or getting them to sort of try on those roles. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think they were kind of trying to do more a who is triple threats, who can dance, who can sing, who can kind of, who is easy to pick up on different things, and just I think redirecting and all of that side, rather than it being a case of who is specifically Sky and Sophie. It was more a case of just who will be able to work with this creative team, and who is able to. I liked that with when they had the ensemble, it was the ensemble of dancers. It was a good way of showing as well who is able to ensure that they feel like they're the principal character in this production number, and who won't
you've
get
got to
lost.
stand out. Those are some really talented dancers. There's some alumni from some West End shows in there. You've really got to, if you're not standing out in that group, then it's the same thing in Mamma Mia. There's a huge full dance ensemble in that show, so that's a really great point as well. Then comes the biggest shock for me of the episode, the biggest surprise twist: rain in Greece.
I feel like this has probably been the biggest question mark that comes up, that I think everybody wants to talk about, is the fact that because it's held outside, they are dealing with the weather and the changing weather and the changing natural light of the Grecian land. I think it's Corfu.
Yes, which is in Greece.
Yes.
Yes? Anyone who's been watching my videos know I'm horrible at geography. I know a lot about theatre. I know next to nothing about places.
I know they're facing a different country, because when we've spoken to people, they've said...
Alan Carr said that in the Q&A, didn't he? It's sort of like you could see the next landmass over the water. But now we're both British, so we're used to a rainy summer outdoor gathering. But in Greece, now I've never been to Greece, but that's not in line with my expectations about the country. I will say, and there's a little bit of my own experience here, because I visited one of the filming locations for Mamma Mia 1 or 2. 1. Mamma Mia 1, I think. No, 2. 2. I take it back. And that was in Croatia. I was on a little island in Croatia. I was doing a boat tour and went to one of those. So I don't know how much of the film was actually filmed in Greece. But obviously that's where they've gone to cast this show that will be performed entirely indoors. But
they might end up in an
and the TV show
version.
has this travel sponsorship as well. So I think it's all a tie-in with that. Were the sponsors expecting rain in Greece? I don't know. Who's to say?
I do feel like it makes this audition process slightly harder, because normally they wouldn't have to do this audition process outdoors. But at the same time, it shows their determination and their ability to deal with things that could go wrong. Yeah. And one thing we all know about the West End and theatre in general is live theatre is very different. They're going to be dealing with moving scenery and crazy dance numbers, and anything could change in a moment's notice. So at least through this process, the judges will be able to tell who is able to remain unfazed and has in some senses, a show must go on mentality.
Yeah, a tenacity and a resilience.
Yeah.
To the weather. But through the rain, all the performances went on. And I feel like the judges were very supportive of everyone. There was nothing that really went wrong. It was a very high standard of performance. It was a great little showcase of everybody. So then when we came to this elimination decision, because they hadn't really spoken about it much in the episode, it sort of arrived as quite a surprise. And you thought, oh my gosh, they were all great. We haven't really got to know any of them yet. How could they possibly eliminate anyone? And then the elimination decision ended up being...
that nobody was leaving.
Nobody was leaving, which I think was the right decision.
Well, in the past shows, by the point that you got to somebody leaving, we'd had episodes where it was just focused on the process of whittling it down to the core lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like because the series doesn't cover that process that got to this final 14, this episode kind of works nicely as a get to know the contestants.
Exactly.
And I feel like if somebody had gone in that first week, it would have felt a bit... I'd have been upset that they wouldn't have got the proper spotlight that these shows normally bring. So I'm glad that we'll get at least 2 weeks where you'll see them do different performances.
Yeah.
And then when we start to lose people, at least it will feel like
everyone's had a bit
moment.
of a platform. Everyone's had a moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. And no one emerged as like the weak link of the group. So I think it would have felt a bit abrupt to have anyone be eliminated.
And I think because they're all performing in groups, I feel like even though it might be likely that for a while they will still be in groups, at least we'll have seen them do different performances in those and maybe in different setups with different people. Mm-hmm. Because who knows if these pairings were the best, what these group pairings were the best for each person. It could be that next week they're a different way around and somebody gets a spotlight that maybe wasn't possible with who they were with this week.
Yeah. So on to the review then, talking about this first episode and really this series and what it's like and what we think about it so far, because there have been a lot of opinions on social media.
There have been a lot of opinions.
I've been seeing the tweets, I've been seeing the comments on a video I put out already, and I'm no stranger to criticism.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know, if you're meeting us both now for the first time, but I am a theatre critic, and so I have plenty of videos on the internet where I am sort of breaking things down and, really deep diving into how something could be improved. And I think people can do that and people can share these hot takes. I also just think that this is a really fun TV show that maybe doesn't need to be taken quite so seriously. But we are going to address everything that people have been saying and talking about our own thoughts about it as well. Because it's different. I think what people are reacting to is the differences between those previous shows and this one.
Yeah, I feel like people that were massive champions of the past series have come to this one expecting it to be exactly the same. And what we've got to remember from the off point is completely different production team, which means that it's never going to be completely the same because it's not the same people creating this show. And also, just if we're looking back at exactly what this show is, it's the first time that it's been a show where we're looking at replacements in a production rather than the origins of a show where they're looking for somebody that's going to create a production.
Yeah.
There's a whole different mindset there.
It is.
Even from us looking at this show, we're all being like, we know there's been so many, over 2 decades worth of people that have played Sophie and Sky, so everybody has a much more defined idea of who these people are going to be because they have to fit that production, which is not going to change.
And I think anytime there's a film adaptation as well, that really colours people's expectation of this is what we expect that person to look like. So already, I think with Sophie's, whether they're predisposed to thinking about it being a blonde because of Amanda Seyfried in the film or what have you. One of the biggest things that people have been talking about is that we didn't see that initial audition process. We didn't see the process by which they found these 14 finalists.
Which I kind of get, because I feel like you would get a sense of who they are, where they're from, and that when we've looked back at some of the series, I feel like the series with Jodie Prenger, in the auditions, you had these funny moments with Jodie in each audition.
Oh, she already arrived with a huge amount of character because she turned up with a date.
Yeah, and everybody kind of fell in love with her straight away, which now looking back at it when you watch the series, it feels obvious why by the time they hit the live episodes, why Jodie was always going to get a ton of votes. And I feel like maybe because the first thing that you see of this series is them performing that performance of Mamma Mia already. They're all so talented.
Yeah.
You can tell straight away they all can be in a West End show. I think it's nice when they do the process of showing the auditions, because you get a sense of what actually is the casting process of the West End show, which is not going to Greece and doing this kind of format and doing these full production numbers where you're in front of an ensemble to prove it. It's more of a group session. It's more of a group kind of everybody learning the dance together, etc.
Can you imagine if that actually if
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
if every audition for Mamma Mia actually involved a holiday in Greece? I think, that the carbon footprint has to be considered,
Yes.
because that does feel environmentally irresponsible. But there's something to be said for softening the blow of a rejection when it's like, you know what, I'll cope with this back at my hotel by the pool with a cocktail.
I mean, people would be loving life.
I'd be thrilled.
I think, going back to that point of showing the audition process, I think what people forget, though, is that if you're showing that, you can't just show the positives of these 14 people
You
getting
also see
into
the
this thing.
rejections.
You're going to the rejections. You're going to... I mean, the one thing that feels a bit sad looking back at those series is showing where they highlighted people not getting the notes right, or the reason why they were cut. And then I think sometimes, would that hinder any chance of them future with roles? Because if that gets clipped or becomes a meme or becomes anything like that, that's such a mindset of a performer that wouldn't happen if they were in the traditional casting process, because nothing from that
Would be made public.
goes... Exactly.
Social media has changed hugely
Yes.
since those original seasons were airing. And for everyone who's saying, oh, we didn't get that first episode with the auditions, I would encourage you to look back and go and rewatch, because we rewatched the night before.
Yes.
We watched the first couple episodes of Over the Rainbow,
Yeah.
back from 2010, if you can believe it. That was 13 years ago. And it hits quite differently now to rewatch some of those. A lot of it, it's very brutal. And I think television has changed. I think social media has changed. And so I think this is all for good reason. What might have been a good middle ground is... my one sort of enduring criticism from this first episode is that I don't think we really got to know them as individuals as much as I
agree.
wanted to. I wanted to meet them more. And if we'd had more of a segment on each performer where we met them, and then we got to see footage of their audition
I think
back
that
at
would
the
have
first
worked,
stage.
yes.
Because there's magic in those auditions. Think of the Susan Boyle Britain's Got Talent TV moment. You capture an awful lot of magic in those first audition stages. We don't necessarily have to include all of the TV tropes that were a lot more common back then, talking about like funny stories from auditionees and people with like dead relatives and all of this stuff that is really present in those old shows if you go back and see it, and they're trying to amp up the drama of it all.
I mean, we don't know yet in future episodes whether whether they do this depth. I think it's always a case, though, if you have an episode where nobody leaves, I do start to wonder, should they have done a double bill of, even if it was over the weekend, maybe they did a Saturday and a Sunday for episode 2, so we did lose someone that first weekend.
Yeah.
Or, so we got that kind of double chunk of getting to know someone, getting to know them, and because I feel like sometimes when you don't lose anyone, it's like, okay, but it doesn't get people into that mindset of this is...
You are bloodthirsty. You are ready for heads to roll. Aaron's like, cut them now.
I just think that process of, some people are going to leave this competition, it's not these people for all these weeks, starts to get people a bit more involved and caring.
I think some people said the stakes didn't feel very high yet, and I think until we get that first elimination, they're not going to feel that high. But I guess we're going to lose one of each. I guess we're going to lose a Sophie and a Sky.
They're going to have to cut down people quicker, because we know that it's not going to be that far away when the final will have to be, because of them needing to join the production. Yeah. So
it's all quite a tight turnaround from the schedule that's been suggested to us via press releases and such. What's interesting, and you and I have been debating about whether or not one of the other hallmarks of those old seasons is they had the elimination song. They had a sing-off, somebody chose, and then the rest of them all sang this group song. For the Nancys, it was Cheerio, but be back soon. For the Dorothys, it was the very brutal, we thank you very sweetly for doing it so neatly. You ditched her so completely. And then they would sing a sort of a swan song moment as they would walk up some stairs or be carried off by a flying moon. I think, because this feels different, it doesn't feel live, it feels a lot more like a bake-off where they're just going to hug and cry at the end. The judges are closer to them, they're closer as a group to each other, and we're seeing more of that. I don't think we're going to get a whole elimination hoopla. I think it's going to be a lot like bake-off. You think there might be something?
I wonder if they were... So at the start of the series when they sang I Have a Dream, half of them were in the boats that were going to there. And I mean, if you know the film well, you know that the boats arriving and leaving is a big hallmark. And like when we see Rosie and Tanya and they get on the boat in the first film, I wonder if there could be a sense that they sing "Thank you for the music," like as a group, and then the one person sings a tiny bit of a line, like the Sophie segment, and they get on the boat and the boat takes them away from the island. Like the idea that that's the end of their journey. Someone will shoot it
with a flaming arrow, like a Viking funeral.
No, I feel like that sense of them leaving.
Yeah.
Because I think if they all hug and everything, it may not feel like, and that's it, they're gone. I just might be in...
I think we might have like video footage of someone like the behind the scenes drag race exit, so we see them like packing, getting in a taxi, but I don't think I don't think they'll sing necessarily.
Although we do know that who the sponsor is for this series, that maybe that's part of it, that the elimination shows the flight process, because that is a link to the Jet2 holidays, the kind of... And these will be the people that are safely getting them back to the UK.
There you go. All in the safe hands of Jet2.
I believe so.
Jet2 holiday. They're not sponsoring us, so we don't actually need to get it right. If anyone from Jet2 wants to reach out, then you probably already don't. But I wanted to say one thing I really loved from this episode was the moments where they spoke with each other about graduate life.
Yeah.
And you heard those exchanges about like auditioning and like moving back home and saving money and the realities of being a performer. Because when this was announced, a lot of people aren't necessarily thrilled with these types of shows. And they said, what about all of the young actors we already have who have trained, who have committed, who want this career? What about them? And then it transpires almost everyone on this show has trained.
All bar one, I believe.
I think so. Some are still in training. But I think so, all bar one. I think all bar one of the Sophies.
Yeah.
From what we can tell. And now it's interesting that it's pivoted. Everyone was like, what about the trained performers? Give them a chance. And now everyone's saying, what's the point of this show when they're all trained? And what you said earlier is always my favourite thing about these shows. It's not just about who wins. Everyone's getting platformed. Everyone is getting... The people have now got agents just on the back of this show.
Exactly.
Hasn't even aired yet, and they have agents, which is a big step for graduate performers. And again, some of them have agents, haven't graduated yet, which is an incredible position to be in, because normally that's what their showcase would be for at the end of their training.
I think what we forget as well is that musical theatre performers in general are not... It takes so much to become a name in the industry, for people to be aware of who they are. And this is such... I mean, we look back at the Olivers, the Nancys, the Marias, the Josephs, and we go, that programme gave these people a platform that they could say, oh, it's this person from this TV series. It highlighted musical theatre performance as people to be aware of.
Yeah.
And that's how they got into principal roles. And we look at people like Lee Mead suddenly was a name. Jodie Prenger was a name. You go, how did Jodie...
Enduringly, still now.
Yeah, you look at how are so many people aware of Jodie Prenger as a theatre performer, and it's because of Venanti. It's because of I Do Anything, and now we look at why like Samantha Barks is such a name in theatre, that she is a Western star leading lady that general public are aware of, and it's because she was on I Do Anything, and then she proved just how good she was in then the shows that she went to, and people booked tickets to see the show because they were in it. And,
exactly that. I'm going to have a soapbox moment, because I literally said this at the screening. Anything that sells musical theatre right now is fantastic, because the theatre industry, I'm going to look at you, the camera, the theatre industry is still in a very difficult and precarious financial position in the wake of COVID and shutdown and all of this. And for years anyway, shows have been reliant on star casting. Something that's touring, something that's opening in a big West End house will need to get celebrity names in. And anything that turns a trained, qualified, talented performer into a name is a win-win for everyone, because they have the training, they have the goods, and it makes them known to audiences. It's making mainstream audiences excited about musical theatre, and that's great. The only other piece of criticism I have, because I did really love it, and we haven't, celebrated all the positives.
Yeah.
I did think it was great, and it was fun, and it's a brilliant platform, and I like that there's a kindness to it. Like we said, it feels more wholesome, it feels more genuine. We saw, the behind-the-scenes shot after they finished that first big number. It wasn't all, overproduced. We saw the camera crew and everything. We saw them celebrating that they'd done it. The only other little criticism I have is they're still trying to play that narrative of creating a star from humble beginnings, but now they're doing it as these drama school graduates who have nothing and they've all been auditioning for years, and that's not quite true. Because like I said, if you haven't watched my video already where I introduced you to all of the contestants, some of them have worked professionally. Some of them are working professionally right now. Some of them are having to fly back down to do press about this TV show because they're up in Edinburgh being Princess Jasmine on the Aladdin tour. That's Desmonda, that's not one of the guys.
I think it annoys me sometimes that that they try and make it out we're trying to find somebody that could be in the West End, rather than it being the process of auditioning is that people from West End shows and people who are drama school graduates all have to audition to get a role.
Yeah.
It's not a process where if you've been in the West End, you're offered roles. It's everybody auditions. And there should be this process of you might be in a job currently, but you're going to be auditioning for the next job because...
Completely.
Unfortunately, how the West End works is most people get a year contract and then change shows.
Yeah.
Or
there was Maddie, for example, who they introduced as working in a bar, and she's also an Erdang graduate.
Yeah.
But that wasn't how they introduced her. With Desmonda, they said that, I can't remember whether she's a receptionist or whatever her job is between shows, but she's spent, this year alone, she's done Miss Saigon in Sheffield, where she was the alternate Kim. She's Aladdin on the she's Jasmine on the Aladdin tour. I was going to say she's Aladdin on the Jasmine tour. Did I say that the first time around?
No, you said it correct the right time.
Are we sure?
I know.
Okay, she's Jasmine on the Aladdin tour, which is a huge gig, which is a great gig. It's a leading role in a massive
Disney musical.
Show. Exactly. But they want to portray that narrative. They want to play their storyline, so I get it.
I guess with Strictly, sometimes you see it all the time where if somebody's had a career that's involved, they're a performer and they've trained somewhere or anything.
Oh, you can do everything. You're this hugely talented dancer. Oh, you've been to drama school. You already have every opportunity and every privilege immediately at your fingertips, which we know is not the case.
Yeah, this is documented as if it's the series for people that aren't in the industry to get into the industry. Well, every year they're looking for a new cast for a show. This happens on repeat.
Yeah.
And that's what should be illustrating, and hopefully is.
Yeah.
Rather than it being this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we are casting the roles of Sky and Sophie because they are never cast normally every year, and people don't have the opportunity to go for these roles every year.
Yeah.
That's my slight bugbear. It's these are just series that help show what happens and trying to create profiles for musical theatre performers at the end of the day.
Yeah. So finally then, let's do our little bit of analysis. Let's talk about these performances. So we don't really have much by way of a power ranking yet, because everyone was on a pretty even playing field and did their group performances. We didn't get to see them really as individuals. No one was eliminated. Everyone got pretty positive and encouraging feedback. What we did have is we started to see a little bit more of their personalities. And I started to get a sense of who I already could see as a Sky or a Sophie, and who I couldn't quite see in those roles yet. That's not to say that this isn't going to change. But immediately, there were 3 of the Sophies that I thought could walk in and do the show tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that for me, Stevie and Stephanie, who I thought were pretty textbook Sophies, could instantly do the role in a very recognisable way. And then someone like Maddie, who I thought would be a really different take on the character. She reminded me a lot of Jessica Daly, who was on
Oh, yes.
the Over the Rainbow show
Yeah.
as Jess Robinson. I think they're from the same part of the country, actually. But in each of their groups, they feel like a little bit of like the quirky one, but just such a personality
Yeah.
that really comes through. Such a dynamic, exciting performer. Jessica Daly, who didn't win that show, but has gone on to have a great career afterwards, who we saw quite recently in a revival of The Wizard of Oz, ironically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Maddie, Stevie and Stephanie were the ones for me that I can already see as Sophie. There are some other great talents. I mean, they're all talented.
Yeah.
But someone like Leah really shone for having a beautiful voice that I just don't think was necessarily a Sophie voice. There's a maturity to her voice. And the tone of it, it wasn't giving me the sort of the brightness and the youthfulness that you might associate with that character. What did you think about the girls? Did you have any different ones to the ones I said?
I kind of had the same three, I think, as you, that I could see just as instantly. They have the personalities and the kind of the vibes and the tone in their voices that you kind of see as Sophie. I mean, like we said earlier, there's like 24 years worth of Sophies to look back on and kind of have a sense of who they normally cast. Because it's not just a case of who we'd like to hear and see. It's a sense of this is a show that has existed for ages. Rather than the previous series where you'd have no idea what the production they're going into, what different takes they're going to do. They're going into a well-oiled machine that has a very... Like, they need to fit in with the company that are already there doing the show right now. Yeah. And all three of those I could see fit in with the cast we know exist.
Yeah.
But then it's interesting with, say, somebody like Esme, and that some ways I'm like, her voice and kind of her posture and her style, I'm like, that gives me the kind of more the Amanda Seyfried version of kind of Sophie, and maybe what people watching might expect because they're looking for the Sophie from the film.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when she talks about height and then going, well, actually, this production already exists and we know Maz and we know these different people. Normally, when casting a show, they do look at height across the board.
You're balancing it with the other performers auditioning.
Because she's going to be with... It's like, what are the heights of Ali and Lisa, her two friends at the minute?
Those are predetermined, exactly, yeah.
So we don't know currently how... It's interesting thinking about that fact and going, actually, with the current Mamma Mia company, how will height matter in this? Yeah. Is that something that would come up?
Unfortunately, it does seem to be an enduring factor in casting, and she spoke about that. She spoke about being a taller girl, and this sort of being something that works against her often, because, you know, it's hard to get cast as a taller girl if
especially
they
in
always
a
want the
romantic
guy to be
lead.
taller, especially in a romantic lead. And so she said, I'm here to show that Sophie can be taller than Sky, which I think, why not? It's interesting that she is one of the first few to sort of have a bit of a storyline because of that angle. Leah, what we learned about her is that she's still in training. She's, I think, the youngest of the group.
So, yeah.
So she's like the baby Sophie, I guess. Esme is tall Sophie, it seems, right now. But we haven't really learned enough about anyone else. No one else seems to have much of an angle yet. If there's anything resembling a front runner, I mean, it's really early days. It's really early. But Stephanie, I thought, got pretty great feedback.
I think Stephanie got the most well-rounded feedback from everyone.
And again, I think probably because of that opening, I was already keeping an eye on her. But if you saw the little choices she was making in that first number that she performed with Maddie, and again, they gave her a choreography moment where she did a trust fall backwards off the table and they pushed her back onto it. That says the choreographer knows that they can give her stuff and they like working with her because they know she's talented. A choreographer will be like, you can do this, fantastic, we're going to play, we're going to have some fun. So that's a great sign. That works in her favour.
That proves that the creative team that are creating these performances, they already... Because they have to
They're seeing your talent.
Exactly. They have to figure out when they're putting these numbers together what their performers can do and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell straight away, okay, they're definitely confident dancers, because they wouldn't give them this showcase or have choreographed it if they know it wasn't possible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So then let's talk now about the Skies. Now, people online were saying that the standard among the guys was lower than among the girls.
I don't know if that's the case. I think the music of ABBA in general does, especially what people have come to know about Mamma Mia, is always going to gear towards the female performers.
When you're watching an ABBA performance, like not Mamma Mia, but the original band, who are you paying attention to? Who's best highlighted by those songs in those keys, and like even in the show, like who really shines in that material? And also, would it be unheard of if among a group of 14 performers all doing musical theatre, there were more talented girls than talented boys? Think about every audition you've ever been in, every amateur theatre society. It's usually the case.
And I think we just haven't seen as much. I think
it's also early to say that.
I think the availability to what they can do is slightly smaller with maybe the male characters with these songs. There's not... Most of the songs for the keys related that they could sing are more stand and sing. And, I mean, when you look at the show, really, all the male parts in that show, other than maybe... I mean, Does Your Mother Know? Pepper's big moment is actually more Tanya singing and Pepper showing his dance ability. Yeah. And Sky in the show... often it is duetting with Sophie.
And it's a smaller role. Let's say that as well, realistically. If the boys are a little, if they're not quite as uber talented as the girls, Sky is a smaller part. Who can you see as Sky already out of the boys?
So I feel like Tobias kind of comes across as a easy, straight away,
he could do it tomorrow.
He could be Sky. But I feel like we know that as well just from where he's recently been. He's recently been an understudy JD.
Yeah.
So we already know that he can be relied on to be in a show. I feel like it was interesting in this first episode with how they spoke about Marcellus as well, when they were saying about his performance or if he has a slightly weaker voice, and I was like, knowing his career, we know that he obviously can very much be trusted to be in shows as a performer.
Yeah.
Because he has possibly the most credits in big shows already.
He's a little older than the rest. He's 36. He doesn't look older.
No.
I don't think he reads older on stage necessarily.
At all. I would never have known that he was one of the older ones of that group.
No. I could so nearly see him as Sky. I'm so ready to put him in that category, but I just don't know that I'm quite as convinced with Marcellus yet, because I don't know if it's completely for that role. Interestingly, I spoke about Craig earlier having a great voice, and I think he does, but I don't, as of yet, see him quite as a Sky either. I don't know if it's the facial hair, but possibly. I could see him being that great person in the ensemble who is a bit young but still understudies one of the dads anyway, and going on for Sam and holding his own against Maz Murray. I could see him doing that more readily than I could see him doing Sky.
I agree. I'm not surprised that he was in Bat Out of Hell before.
He was in Bat Out of Hell.
He kind of has that kind of slightly edgier look.
Yeah. And a great rock voice. He might be that person who doesn't win this show but goes on to do completely different roles. Yeah. Because some of them never go anywhere near anything that looks like that part they were initially auditioning for in the first place, and have great careers regardless.
I think as well is with the Skies in particular, it will be how they're partnered with the Sophies.
Yes.
I think that they could feel like an amazing Sky when you're seeing them separate, but when you see them partnered with people to have that to see if they can connect, and if you don't feel that, if then suddenly it kind of pulls apart and it's like, oh no, you're great as a performer, but in terms of believing you as a Sky and believing this relationship, if that falls apart, that's something that will be interesting to see.
Yeah. We also had Owen and Darcy, who both had these big personalities. Again, very talented. I don't yet see them as Skies completely, but they're well on the road to getting there, I thought.
They have the cheeky charm that I feel like is...
They have the cheeky charm.
Which I feel like is very that character. It's that you understand why Sophie loves him so much, because that's kind of the enduring thing through the show, is that is a relationship you don't... You believe straight away and you carry it through, because you don't... With this show, with Sky and Sophie, you don't meet them when they meet. That's not really a part of his storyline. It's the fact that you know they're going to get married, So you have to believe straight away, we know this, we don't need to see any of the process of this relationship coming together to believe that this is a true love situation.
And that's a challenge, because so many relationships on stage earn the audience's emotional investment by seeing them come together. These ones, like, I didn't see you meet, I don't know you as a couple, we've not met. So that has to be so believable for you to get on board as an audience member.
And I think that's what made it hard for Darcy's performance, was they had to do that straight away in their first performance, try and show them with their ensemble dancer that there was a connection straight away. And I think it probably put them most at, with the judges, can they be a Sky, more than the other performers who were performing just out
That's
and
a
central.
really good point. No, they were in a much more sort of Sky and Sophie coded kind of a setup, because it was a romantic pairing. No, that's a really great point. I hadn't thought about that. If we did see the boys struggle a bit more than the girls, because none of the girls we really saw getting too phased by their performances, then probably Callum, who was also with Darcy, we saw him struggling a little bit more. He trained at Rose Bruford, and I gather just didn't do a musical theatre training programme, because that's an acting course.
It's an acting course where they do have musical theatre training, but it's not the core.
Not to the same extent as a GSA or an arts ed.
Their core is more acting and to do kind of more plays.
Sure. And he was brave enough to speak about, like he said, like, singing in musical theatre is something that's newer to him, and he would consider himself more of an actor. What I always find interesting is it's the actors who are singing. Now, he's got a great voice.
Yeah.
He's got a great voice, but it's the actors who are singing who then don't bring their acting skill to a vocal performance, because it feels like this completely different thing that they're doing. And so his voice wasn't the problem for me. There was an acting through song moment that didn't quite come through, and I thought it, and then Samantha Barks said it, where he was singing, I can't remember what the lyric was, good days, bad days, or something, the memories, good days, bad days, and knowing me, knowing you. And it didn't, and he just sang it through as if it were just notes, and it wasn't living in each moment, thinking about each moment, and giving us a meaning behind those words.
It's confidence. I feel like that's not what he's used to.
Yeah.
So his focus is on more, am I in tune? Am I singing it correctly? Rather than the part that he is comfortable with, which is just performing and being that. And I feel like we see that often in performers. But then at the same time, we need to know that all these performers that are really love singing and love, like, their vocals or maybe dance is one of their stronger parts, and know that they can still bring Sophie or bring Sky to that, and we're not just seeing a great performer, but we have no clue who they are.
At this stage, on day one, it seemed as though maybe Callum and maybe Zakil were sort of a little bit less confident. It feels like they were maybe like waiting to come out of their shell a little bit more. Zakil really came through in that performance with Owen, but I'd be very intrigued to see him by himself, because I think those two really depended on each other and really worked well together. But I think that might be quite exposing when we see them perform individually.
With the Skies, it'll be interesting to know whether they can do both the Sky that's with Eddie, Pepper and the boys, and also the Sky that is with Sophie. Because they're very polar. They're kind of polar opposites in how you have to be.
It changes the sensibility completely. Yeah,
there's the bromance, the lads, the fun and the jokey part that needs to be believable, but then also the sensitiveness and the caring and the true love side to it, which is when all of his scenes with Sophie.
Yeah. So very early days. We're just gonna throw some darts in the dark. That's not an idiom. I've just made it up. But if you had to guess who might be the eventual winner, if you had to pick a Sky and a Sophie right now, who's winning the programme, and then we will reflect back on this and we will see if we were anywhere near accurate. For me, as of right now, well, I'll let you go first.
If I was saying two names right now, I would say Stephanie and Tobias.
And I would agree with both of those names. For me as well, it would be Stephanie and Tobias. I will give myself perhaps the less nice job of saying, who do I think we might be seeing go home first? I think possibly I'm rooting for him to sort of pull through with the confidence and with marrying his acting skill to his musical ability. But I think at the moment, just in terms of how they're presenting it to us from an editing perspective, maybe Callum, I don't know, might be the first of the boys that we see leaving. And then just because we haven't seen her really emerge as much yet, maybe Maisie from the Sophies, but anyone could turn around and surprise us with a great performance next week.
This is what you never know with editing.
We will all have to wait and find out next week when the second episode of Mamma Mia, I Have a Dream airs on ITV next weekend.
Yes.
For now, that has been our episode 1 recap, review and analysis. Thank you for joining me, Aaron James, in the spare bedroom of our own flat in which we live. And if you want to find us both on social media, you can find Aaron's YouTube channel as Aaron James. And where can the people find you on Instagram and other apps?
So I'm at Aaron James UK on Instagram, X, which was Twitter, Threads, and
TikTok.
And TikTok. I'm on TikTok as well.
Also TikTok. And I am at Mickey Joe Theatre on all of the above. And thank you all for watching, for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed. Make sure to comment with your thoughts on this episode. Who was giving a highlight performance from your perspective? Weigh in on any of the topics that we have discussed in this little recap, and make sure to subscribe, make sure to follow so you don't miss the next one coming out this time next week. Thank you so much. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!